This is an exciting episode. Today's guest is DeeAnn Lensen, who is a trusted and sought after skincare expert who's also an international advanced aesthetics educator, a certified life coach, and a keynote speaker. She's a lifelong skin and empowerment enthusiast that has dedicated over 30 years to the art of beautiful skin arising from within. She's an award-winning and 8-time best-selling author and NLP practitioner, and also the president and CEO of Touche Beauty Serums, and owns Advanced Spa Technologies, which is a 5-star spa consulting, education, and distribution company. In a word, DeeAnn is an absolute superstar. This episode, her and I explore all the underpinnings of our cognition, our mental state, the self-image that we have of ourselves, and some of the ways in which we can expand that so that we can expand our businesses with our spas or massage centers, chiropractic clinics, you name it, anything within the realm, well, frankly, of anything from personal development, business development, and otherwise, but namely and specifically, at least in this episode, within the realm of all things spa and beauty. I personally found this episode to be fascinating, and I hope you do as well. So with that, let's start the show. Of all the fictional characters that embody true wisdom and insight with respects to the development of your own mental landscape, there's only one that jumps to mind, actually two allied, that jump to mind as being the archetypal North Stars that we ought seek advice from in the fictional realm, and that is Yoda and Morpheus. Now, unfortunately, Yoda and Morpheus are fictitious figures in the land of obviously fiction. But here today, we have what might be the Morpheus, if I may say, from the Matrix, the wise one of all things mindsets, management, and the like. And I am excited, dare I say, and I just said it, so I guess I did dare to say it, that today's guest is the embodiment of all things along those lines. And I'm so excited.
Oh.
Again, DeeAnn, thank
Hi.
you for being here.
Oh my goodness. Well, I don't know. Living up to that is going to be quite the challenge, but I am just so eager to share because making a difference is the only thing that matters. So that's why we were put on this earth, by the way, to make a difference. And we'll get into all the reasons that hold us back and all the ways that we can change that.
Yes, exactly. And in the recent weeks, it's become even more clear to me that everything with respects to human action is downstream of one thing. And it's our mindset. And it's this thing that it gets chalked up as being some sort of woo-woo-y, hippy-dippy, whatever. But no, everything that we do, think, how we operate, who we associate with, everything that we create, materialize in the way of intellectual property, products, et cetera, it's downstream of our mindset. So today, we're going to devote the show to this theme. Okay, so the listeners, the theme is the 3 secret tools for architecting your mental state to stay ahead of your, let's say, amygdala, your hindbrain that thinks everything is scary. Oh my gosh, the world's on fire. In order that you can live your best self and create the best life. And the term create there is very intentional. So DeeAnn, I know I'm bloviating here out of the gate, but to set this conversation up contextually, I want to lead with a quote. Now, I stole this from you. So I think this will help color the direction of the show. And then we'll get into your backstory and how it all began and the rest of it. So here's the quote. Quote, "We don't get what we think about or want. We get what we believe." Unquote, from Maya Angelou. Most people hear that and they think, oh yeah, how enlightening. Yeah, it is enlightening. And you're about to find out why. So DeeAnn, to get the wheels turning here for the show today, I want to zero in on part of the bio from your website, and I'll read this verbatim. When DeeAnn noticed that when almost everyone she knew was on a roller coaster of success and failure, she began to look for answers. She was passionate about creating a system that would help, because that is exactly the same, quote, virus, unquote, that she had cured herself of. So to turn the wheels here, to get this thing rolling down the tracks, what did you see? Where did this all begin?
Oh my goodness. And I've been using that term, the self-esteem virus, way before we had a virus problem. So I apologize for that, because people are like, oh, virus. Oh my goodness. Where did it start with me? Well, it started with me growing up in an area where I was the wrong race and the wrong religion. And in those days, it really was a big deal. And I was bullied, and I don't need to go into details, except that I had my front teeth knocked out. And at one point, it literally was stoned with rocks and fell underneath my bike. We all have something that in the subconscious mind, because everything we see and hear before the age of 6 or 7 is downloaded into the subconscious mind, that told us that we're not good enough. And even well-meaning parents, you're bad if you walk into the street, you're good or you're bad. And then wow. So I was just struggling. I was way ahead of myself in school. However, I just unconsciously didn't feel good enough. And I went like this in my career. I would rise above my comfort zone, learn more, earn more, and then unconsciously self-sabotage, not show up the same, and get back to my comfort zone. And then when I started leading people, I started noticing them doing the same thing. We teach them something new. They just don't show up the same. They start earning a lot of money and they don't show up the same. Not everyone does that. But it's obvious enough and prominent enough that we need to take a look at why we're doing that. We do it with our health. We do it with our relationships. Oh my gosh. Wow. And it can be fixed.
Wow. So where do we start? We've got these different tools. Actually, let me, before we get into tools, I want to address the skeptic in the crowd first. And by that, I mean to say, I want to make sure that listeners, viewers on YouTube understand the magnitude of the thing of which we are trying to solve for. So I would love to hear your thoughts on what the consequence is of not paying mind to mind, or anything related to that, so we can really fashion up the problem here that we're trying to solve with these tools that we'll reveal here as we proceed through the show.
Because we get what we believe, and those programs are downloaded into our subconscious mind, we're going to act out what we believe. That's why people that win the lottery usually lose it very quickly, because they don't believe themselves to be up here financially. Right. So what happens is that the more we think about and focus on something that is negative, the more of that we are going to get. I remember teaching the Life Mastery course, and there was an 83-year-old woman on. And right in the middle of a conversation, she said, "Thoughts or prayers, And I said, "Emily, tell me what that means to you." She said, "If you think the only time God and the universe is listening to you is when you're on your knees, I have something else to tell you." I just got chills, because we are attracting what we believe. And let's say someone was rude to you, and you were, that you knew that wasn't right. And the rest of the day you repeated, well, that didn't work. He was rude. Can you believe it? He said to me. And the brain doesn't know the difference between it happening once and it happening 50 times. And now it's a bigger problem. So when we repeat things like, I'm fat, I'm not good enough, I'm not beautiful, I can't do this, this isn't going to work, he doesn't love me. The brain, the universe, the combination, and that's where we talk about neuroscience and the brain, and it brings about what we think about, and it grows. And we get to change that. We can call the wham ambulance and talk ourselves into into being a poor victim, poor me, or we can decide what it is that we want in our life and what how we can thrive, how we can use our gifts to help other people, which, by the way, there are more positive hormones that are downloaded into your brain, your body, when you're loving on someone than when you're even receiving love. So there's one way to feel better right now.
Wow. Let's come back to that, because you're bringing to mind tachykinins and the way to improve mental states, which we didn't discuss this before the show, but yes, that is absolutely resolutely agree with that statement of we think that the way to fill our tank is by receiving, you could say, but it's the opposite. Give affection, give compassion, deploy that, etc., and watch your tank of joy and the rest of it inflate. And as you're speaking here, I'm thinking of the Feynman quote. So the physicist Richard Feynman once said, "The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." And as I hear you speak, it has me think that one of the greatest lies that we just by default accept psychologically is that thought is not synonymous from a neurological level. Thought is not synonymous with experience, which that's seemingly not the case. To think a thought, to your point about I've had 50 foul thoughts today about that guy that cut me off in traffic and I'm irate. When you think about that 50 times throughout the day, you're effectively reliving that experience 50 times throughout the day, which of course tarnishes your mental state and the rest of it. So it seems like this is a good setup for the good news, which is how we can deploy these tools to manage our inner state, let's say. So where do you want to start? I guess we could start with, number one, so maybe self-talk. So how do we even get into this topic of addressing the management of our mind, let's say? What's a good starting point here from your end?
The first thing we need to do is to assess, and we're going to speak about the clarity tool, but we're going to assess where you're at, what do you want, and where do you want to be. But here's the thing: we speak to ourselves worse. Now, we were talking earlier about repeating things that are negative and then wondering why they're growing. But we speak to ourselves worse than we would anyone else in our lives, because we would never get away with it. I stood in front of 200 women and said, how many of you, getting ready this morning for this Women of Worth event, poured love on your face, appreciated your face and your naked body? And one 20-year-old raised her hand, kind of looking around the room. We're cruel to ourselves. And if we don't think that that makes a difference, it completely does. And you and I had discussed Dr. Christiane Northrup's work around that. She says that when you attack yourself, you're being attacked, you're attacking, and you're being attacked. So whenever there's an attack, the severity of which will determine how dynamic the fight or flight response is. But even being, oh, you're not good enough, this isn't going to work, you fat pig. People talk to themselves like that all the time. And you're attacking and you're being attacked. And Dr. Christiane Northrup has identified that causes a slight fight or flight response. And when there's a fight or flight response, cortisol and adrenaline are dumped into your body so that you can run from a tiger, but you're not running from a tiger. So it just sits in your bloodstream. Double cortisol, double adrenaline, double inflammation. We're creating disease in ourselves just by the way we talk to ourselves. And if we think that we are going to grow and thrive by telling ourselves that we are worth less, you're wrong. We should speak to ourselves like we would our 6-year-old daughter. Imagine your little girl ran into the room and said, "Mommy, mommy, daddy, daddy, am I pretty?" And you said, "No, your eyes are too far apart." You would never say that to a child, I hope, because you wouldn't want them to create negative programs. But guess what? You're still programmable. You're still programmable until the day you die. And wellness and thriving, we have the opportunity now to be strong and thriving until the day we die. So I'm all about that.
Coming back to that idea you mentioned at the start of the show of to think a thought is, roughly speaking, if not almost a one-for-one reliving of an experience, even if it's a synthetic experience, meaning one that has not happened. Mm-hmm. Is it fair to say then that that is the reason why negative self-talk is so damning? And I mean that almost in the literal sense.
It's creating so much negativity and more negativity in our lives because we believe it, because the unconscious mind believes it. Just like when you're a child, everything you see and hear is downloaded into the unconscious mind because the conscious mind isn't mature enough to say delete, reject. And, have you ever been in a situation where there's a bit of a controversy and you answer and it was your mom talking, it was your mom's voice that comes out and you're like, where is she? She's not here. Well, that's your programming, because the more we repeat things, the more it becomes a belief. A neural pathway is created in the brain where there is a stimulus, an action, and a response. And we start responding to things in the same way. So here's an example. Let's say that let's say someone was in sales and they know exactly what to do in order to create the sale. But they find themselves going up and down and up and down. And one of the reasons is often that they don't believe themselves to be worthy of being successful. They don't believe that they can. And they come up with unconscious excuses not to move forward. I got to do this. Oh, my mom needs me today. Oh, just, I'm going to make a quick phone call and they're not prepared, et cetera, et cetera. They're doing that because they don't really, really believe that it's going to work. And our ego tries to protect us. Our ego talks us out of things all the time. So here's something that I wrote in one of the books, the chapters that I co-authored. I had this vision during the first lockdown of COVID, and in Canada it was locked down. Don't get me wrong. And I also distribute products to spas and hotel spas, especially. We have a company that does that. So there was nothing happening. And my husband was looking at chalets online, chateaus, in France. And he has family there. And no, he's not going to buy one tomorrow, but it's kind of neat that they're so inexpensive because they have to be completely gutted. And he's a contractor. So he was really having fun with that. And I saw a picture of one, and it had what looked like a moat around it. And I went back to my office after he showed me the pictures, and I had this download. DeeAnn, you're living in a little castle surrounded by a moat. And then this little fable came to mind. And nary a lass may cross the moat, lest the self-esteem trolls force her to look in the pool of reflection where she'll see that she's not good enough. So I realized that I was building a bridge still. This was just a couple of years ago, building a bridge over that moat and then letting it rot. And for me, it was the one next step of building my own podcast and dropping the excuses to write a book on my own. I've been in 8 collaborative books, 8-time best-selling author. And my publisher keeps saying, DeeAnn, you've got a book, you've got your own book. But it's interesting because our ego will do anything to protect us from failure. So all these excuses keep coming up, right?
So the solution would seem to be, number one, acknowledge the fact that you have something like a circuit breaker for failure detection. And that circuit breaker, like an old house, is flipping to, I guess it'd be off, on. It would flip the other direction to cut power
Off, yeah.
Yeah. So in this analogy, right, off, exactly. So in this analogy, the off switch is you're taking action to pursue a thing that it is that you're wanting to pursue, whether that's consciously stated or not. And so we need to work on this circuitry, you could say, such that the proclivity to flip to off is not as high. And I'm assuming these tools that we'll talk about today will help in that, with that aim, because it seems like that's the thing that bottlenecks and stifles our potential, is our fear of failure, which is the result of our ego protecting us, in quotes, from a threat that is no longer in the 21st century real, namely saber-tooth tigers and the like. Yeah. So I guess that's the problem that we're trying to solve for today. And there's all sorts of different tools that we can use to help in that journey, or on that journey. Maybe we start with number one. So listening, the three levels thereof, and how this is a neighbor to empathy. So tell us about tool number one.
Okay, good. Well, in the coactive coaching model, they talk about the three levels of listening. And the first level of listening, since we were talking about ego, this is perfect, because the first level of listening is listening with a view to how one can retort and look smart. Now, bring this into business for a moment. Bring this into a therapy situation, a spa situation, where a client comes in and they start telling you what their needs are or what their concerns are. And all the therapist can think about is how to answer and look smart. We've all been in that situation. And I call that caveman listening too, because, we're listening with a view to, if I don't win, I don't eat. We're listening with a view to just look smart. And I know that we've all done it and we've all experienced it, but we were saying something that we really wanted to share. And the answer is, oh yeah. And when I did that, I got an even better score type of thing, right? That's listening at level one. Listening at level two is listening with a view to understanding and exactly what that person is saying, with no ego. Just, I hear you, listening to what they are saying. And listening at level three is listening at level two, but allowing your intuition to go to work and feel what they're saying. And it's just, right now, empathy is so important. Even though things are opening up, people still have feelings of being afraid and not knowing if it's okay to go without my mask. And, empathy is about listening to that person and identifying exactly what they said, and even repeating it back and saying something like, I'm really glad you told me. I remember feeling like that, and it was really not fun. I don't know what to say, but I'm really glad you told me. That's all we need to say. That's empathy. Instead of somebody comes in and says, I'm late for the appointment because I got rear-ended. And we say, well, at least the car wasn't totaled. That's just trying to make us look smart. That's level one, right? That's not about, are you okay? Oh, that must have been scary. I'm sorry. That's all you need to say. It's so, and there's a sense, I think it was Brian Tracy that said, I like me best when I'm with you. And guess what, buddy? If I like myself better when I'm with you, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to do everything I can to be with you, whether it's in relationship or in business. I'm going to be with you. And it's so powerful to recognize that a lot of times we lose relationships, we lose clients just because they don't like themselves better when they're with us, because we're trying so hard to be smarter than they are. Wow.
So I assume we can turn this same skill that I'm sure most of us are sufficiently unapt in, or rather stating it differently. This is a skill that I think the majority of people, myself included, would be behooved to pay mind to and develop. But I'm wondering if there's some relation or some overlay with this concept and the act of turning it in on itself. Meaning, instead of listening outward, if a part of this that you're advocating for is something like turning that internally and then listening for whatever thoughts you're having as maybe the first step in understanding what it is that is happening up here, which seems like the starting point to deploying these other tools. But how do you think about that? Is this
I think that that's really powerful. We need to remember that Christian Neff's research showed that we gauge our self-esteem based on how we compare ourselves to others. So if our self-esteem has been pampered enough that we feel good about ourselves, and you know, the only thing that matters is that we're better than we used to be. Yeah. Whether or not your car is bigger than his, or your husband is better looking or whatever, come on your deathbed, is that going to be a big deal? So if we build up our self-esteem by showing ourselves, by caring for other people and just growing and growing and growing, we're not going to have that challenge of needing to listen at level 1 all the time. We're not going to have that challenge. And when we talk about learning how to change, we need to remember that it takes space, sustained repetition to create a new habit. Because these habits that we're talking about are not going to go away overnight, but you can grow a new neural pathway, and then it's going to be an automatic behavior. And that's what's great about all of these tools. And one of the things that, Austin, that you're leading to is so powerful, and that is how to identify and move forward. And cognitive behavioral therapy, you're naturally, without even going into that exact therapy, that is exactly what you're saying, because we identify a situation in our life that's not working. We become aware of the thoughts and the emotions that are surrounding that, and identify negative or inaccurate thinking. And then we start to create tools, and something as simple as cancel when something comes up, like you're pushing a tape out, putting something else in, cancel. Mark Fournier in his Life Mastery course, which I co-teach, is amazing at that. It'll boy, if that's not going to burn new neural pathways, I don't know what will. But I'd love to. I have a little quote from him. He says, "I became a cognitive behavioral therapist because this therapy helps my clients better understand their own mind. It's like taking your car to a dealership and having the mechanic teach you how to repair it yourself, or better still, install a turbocharger." Wow. It's understanding why you're unhappy, what's not working, and then the thoughts and the feelings that are associated with that, and learning how to switch, learning how to jump off of the dark train and onto the bright train.
Because by paying mind to the dark train, I think is the characterization that you used, we're effectively reliving negative experiences, which reinforces the view that we have by default of a lower self, self-esteem, etc. So we need to be sensitive to the thoughts we're thinking as they come in, which is where I think this listening piece is coming into play. And then decide what to do with that thought as it enters our mind. Is it something like that, or?
Well, I think, and we need to learn to do that for ourselves. And absolutely. And when we make a list of the things of where we want to be, and we'll talk about that as well. When we make a list of where we want to be and what thoughts and actions are going to help to get us there, that is the way it's going to come to fruition. Because if we just say all day long, well, I'm going to only think thoughts that are good, then it's just going to get confused and lost in the shuffle, right? So we have to be clear about where we want to be, what thoughts and behaviors are going to get us there, and learn how to create that spaced, sustained repetition in order to do it.
So the first step is to listen and be sensitive to that. And I'm wondering if it would be, as an exercise, something that you would advocate the audience do. That exercise being something like maybe grabbing a journal and every hour capturing a thought that you had and then tracking that over some period of time to really do a more qualitative, I don't want to say autopsy, it's the wrong word, but qualitative retrospection, let's say, on the content of your mind. 'Cause I think a lot of times, for the majority, at least certainly for me, at least in the past, and I mean, I'm not above this by any stretch, but it's just rumination typically. And it's like this cacophonous, noisy environment. And I wonder, would you advocate for some sort of exercise like that as a starting point to really instantiate the practice of listening, to where you actually like maybe pluck out a thought that you're having every so often? Or how can we put feet to this, I guess, is the question for those that are like, I need to listen more. How do I do it?
Well, I think that's really powerful, because we need to identify what we want, because oftentimes it's harder to say to just start identifying what we're doing wrong. If what we want is to have joy and peace of mind, then we identify that, and then we can start looking for the things that are taking us away from that, and to learn how to shift back into that. If we that's where and that's actually part of the Mark Fournier's life mastery, the dark train, bright train, because you can actually even have a little kit that you open up, that you smell something that makes you feel beautiful, and pictures of people that you love and places that you want to be when you're having those dark train moments and you're stuck in the negativity, because you know that the more you repeat that negativity, the more it's going to perpetuate and get bigger.
Yeah,
it's true.
We've got to listen. So we're sold on the idea of listening. We want to listen. Maybe we're doing some sort of exercise to track that. Me personally, one of the activities that I'm doing as of late, given that I'm in a program that is along these lines, transformation life mastery type program, and the exercise that the coach is having us do is every day we're sniffing out 10 unuseful thoughts that emerge, capturing that, and then asking ourselves the question, what is happening in my being that is producing that thought? And it's just this analytic approach to better understand what's happening in the food fight of your mind. And I'm sure he's leading us somewhere else down the line with maybe more declarative statements that counter that or that kind of thing. But I can't believe that the majority of people at least seem to not have any awareness as to the contents of their mind beyond just rumination. So there's something to this. And I think there's, as a first step in the management of your mind, you've got to listen to what's going on up there. So are there any other notes on that topic or with this tool that you'd want to share with the audience before we move to the second tool?
I think with this one, we're going to get to the whole clarity tool, but I think let's just continue with how all of the different ways of processing these things make a difference. Like, for instance, neuroscience is amazing because it's the study of the brain and how to use coaching programs that work with the way the brain works. And if you go back to Egyptian or ancient Egyptians, did you know that they used to, they had this instinct that there was more to a human being than just the brain. They thought that the core of the body and of the person and their right, it was the heart. They actually drilled holes in the head and pulled out the brain before they mummified people, because they felt that the heart was the core of the person. And now we know that there's a correlation, of course, to the brain and the heart or the soul, and how important it is to be able to identify that. I recently did a meditation from Deepak Chopra about the vagus nerve, and I don't know if you're aware of that, that it is the only nerve that communicates with the entire body. It sends messages to your brain about your digestive system, all of your organs, checking in. And when that's out of balance, it can cause all kinds of disturbances in the body. As a matter of fact, if there's a vagus, if it really goes off, you'll probably just pass out. And that actually happened to me. The one time that I kind of passed out, I had this really funny, my stomach just went really weird and grinding around. And all of a sudden, I saw a dream, but I was awake, and my head went bang, right face down on my desk. And they did all kinds of research, went to, my brain was checked, my heart was checked, and they said I was totally fine. It was a vagus nerve incident. Now, when you can reset your vagus nerve just by doing a deep breathing and focusing on your heart area. So here's where we're connecting the brain and the heart. Deep breathing, focus on your heart area, and every 3 or 4 breaths, when you breathe out, make it an ah sound. So you're breathing in, you're focusing on your heart, and every 3rd or 4th one is ah. That really does serve that, soothe that nerve. And, I'll tell you, it's amazing, because since I've been doing that, I've had even more energy, and it's amazing stuff. So yes, the brain, the heart, the soul, there's such a powerful correlation. I have another quote for you. It says, "The beauty of neuroscience is that it studies the very nature of the human brain. And although our mind is the true seat of consciousness, it wouldn't exist without our brain. So the better we understand our brain, the better we understand and ultimately control our mind." And that actually is also Marc Fournier. It's fascinating stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%, because it's this intersection of physiological, I don't want to call it hacks, but I can't think of a better term. Physiological hacks like the vagus nerve breathing pattern, which reminds me of a phrenic nerve breathing pattern, which is similar. And there's probably some overlap there where you're getting dual benefit or tri benefits or quad benefit for other physiological reasons with that sort of intentional deep breathing, where, like in the case of the phrenic nerve, that breathing pattern, which I learned from Dr. Huberman from Stanford and neuroscientists out there, that breath pattern or breathing pattern is 2 sharp inhalations and a long exhale. And it seems similar to the phrenic or the vagus nerve reset, let's say. So yeah, this is fascinating for the obvious reason of there's something that inhibits people's success capacity. What the hell is it? That's the question that I'm trying to answer. And I think it's everything downstream of your mind, your brain, your limiting beliefs, your call it what you will. And the fact that there are tangible, deployable things that we can do right now, breath work, relaxation techniques, other things that we'll talk about, is like the best news in history. Because it means, as an implication, that no one, and I'm leery to make this statement because obviously there are people that are victims of tragedies and all sorts of horrific grotesquities, obviously. But I'm using this term loosely, so bear with me, audience, if you take offense. It's not intended. But the good news of this whole package of ideas that, some of which we've already exposed today, is that it is the best news a person could possibly hear, because it means despite your circumstance, and I'm thinking all the way back to Viktor Frankl in Auschwitz, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, there is a way to prevail and see to the success, even if it comes, I believe in his 60s, the founder of KFC, he didn't start KFC till his 60s. I'm almost certain of that. You can have success if we can just unshackle you from whatever inhibitions you possess cognitively, in your mind, in your body, in your physiological state, because perhaps you're living in a state of chronic stress and you don't know how to unwind. So let's continue, because again, to me, this is the topic above all topics as it pertains to anything. You want to become a world-changing physicist. Great. You're not going to do it. Limiting beliefs.
That's
you want
right.
to become spa owner number 1 in Canada with the highest revenue per square foot, or whatever that looks like. Can't do it if your mind is shackled. So let's continue. I want to drill into the second tool, which is the clarity tool, unless there was any other notes that you wanted to share on the vagus nerve bit or anything else.
One little note about neuroscience, and one of the key neuroscience coaching modalities that I've experienced and learned about is emotional freedom. Emotional freedom techniques. Yes, the tapping, but emotional intelligence, and really understanding which emotions drive you, and that they do testing to determine whether you default to other or to self under stress. And what's really powerful about that is that there are the key emotions. We have 7 emotions. And we know that there's been research that has proven that every emotion has energy, and that shame is at the bottom of the scale with Dr. Hawkins' scale, and love and joy are the next thing to enlightenment and sainthood. So here's the thing: anger, anxiety, fear, joy, love, sadness, and shame are the emotions. And did you know that joy and love in a healthy person are representing around 60% of all the emotions that are experienced, and the rest, all the other emotions, share the 40%? So we can start to recognize that, when we're screaming in the car about somebody who's driving wrong, or we're, I always say we all have a little thread of a problem, and then we knit at it. Pretty soon we have a whole sweater. Well, it's impossible to be in joy and love when we're so busy knitting it into a sweater because we want to be right. And, emotional intelligence is about being able to recognize your emotions and notice this. Now, this is a really good tool for everyone listening, and to notice how you act and react with other people within those emotions, and to be able to have the presence of mind to say, what outcome do I want in this interaction? What is the ultimate outcome do I want? Do you see how that's going to override ego? Because the emotion of anxiety or fear is going to rest, and you're going to, because if ultimately you want a relationship, or you want a sale, or you want to provide a good treatment, then it's going to convert to love and joy. Are you thinking about love and joy?
There are 50 thoughts that come to mind, and plucking the correct one here is tricky. You mentioned outcome, which implies selection. And it seems as if, well, is that, let's see. I think what's happening is because I'm, like I mentioned before the show, I'm 6 chapters into this book, Psycho-Cybernetics, and I'm starting to see the entire world through this lens of the mind being this machine that functions a lot like autopilot on an aircraft. The problem, though, is that we people, by default, if we're not intentional about programming our autopilots to help us actualize the goals that we are after, it is going to sabotage us and work against us, because for whatever reason, whether it be the focusing illusion, so work from Daniel Kahneman on this idea that whatever you are thinking about is not as important as you think it is while thinking about it, or stating it differently, you are what you think about, something like that. That might be more of an Aristotelian idea. But the mind functions like a machine on autopilot. And if we are not careful about how we architect it, the code, let's say, it's going to work against us. It's going to stifle our capacity to succeed. It's going to stifle the development of our personality. It's going to stifle, as a result of that, the expression of our brand adjective that we want our customers to experience. They walk into our spas, et cetera. And it's the number one killer of human ingenuity in my eyes. And so
Totally.
it's such an all-encompassing topic. It's extremely difficult to figure out what thread to yank on next. So I'm going to phone a friend. Where do we go from here?
Yeah. How about decide where you want to be and know that that's possible. Decide where you want to be and know that that's possible. I mean, my dad started in the coal mine in Carbon County, Utah, and he ended up running Henry Reinhard Brewery, half the brewery in Portland, Oregon. He just decided that he wanted to keep moving his family to a better place, and et cetera, et cetera. So, decide what you want to be, and the tools to get the tools in order to make change are everywhere. But here's the thing, it does take space-sustained repetition. And when you're working with someone, either a course like you are, Austin, or a coach, you're going to be held gently accountable to do the work that it takes to make the changes. And, it was Dr. Wayne Dyer, I believe, that said, we all have a gift that we can perform at genius level. But, imagine, remember when I was a little girl, you'd run into the room and say, I can sing, I can dance. And then, you hear, you can't do that. And it could be siblings, it could be schoolmates. You can't do that. That's not good enough. That'll never work. And it's kind of like, our gift is just, it's like covered in little stinky layers of onion. And we can peel those off one at a time and know that we, I know not everybody, like you said, not everyone has had a traumatic childhood, but we all have something that will hold us back if we let it. And we can make the decision. Do you want your child driving your bus or your adult? Wow.
I can hear someone in the audience rebutting, but I don't know what I want to be. I don't know what I want to do. And of course, this show's for spa owners and wellness business owners, et cetera. So maybe if we make this a bit more applicable to them, perhaps it's, I don't know if I want to open up another location, or I don't know if I want to do a rebrand, or I don't know if I want to make this hiring decision or scale my business or whatever. How do you get unstuck from, or how do you move away from a state of indecision, which seems to be, if I'm not mistaken, really, that is the first step in re-architecting the software running your hardware, that is your mind or your brain. I don't want to get off the philosophical rails and get into like dualism and all the Cartesian. Is it mind and brain, or are they one and the same? What's going on there? But let's just call it mind for sake of simplicity. Let's say I'm stuck, I'm paralyzed, I have 1,000 options, analysis paralysis. Maybe I'm looking at my branding. Do I want to use the orange color or the red? Which hue of that? And they're stuck. How do you steer someone out of the quicksand of being stuck and incapable of deciding on what that outcome looks like?
Well, the first thing that pops into my mind, because I've recently surrounded myself with some of the industry's top people, and I'm honored that they've reached out and want to do business with me. But I asked somebody who's already done it. I mean, reaching out and getting the support that you need to, because, we can't see the forest for the trees oftentimes in business. And it's our own, it's those self-esteem trolls on the other side of the moat. What if I fail? Right. But the thing is, can we move to the clarity tool?
Yeah, I think this is that's the setup there. I think actually that's a fitting setup. Yeah.
So in the Knowledge Business Blueprint course, Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins offer this tool called the Clarity Tool. And since I bought the course, I'm allowed to share it. And I've added just a little bit more explanation. So let's walk through it. Ask yourself this question: if you change nothing, where will you be in a year? Will your health be better or worse? Will your relationships be better or worse? Will your business be better or worse? And there are some things that I coach as a spa consultant that can change a business without changing a whole lot of things that are pretty rapid. And one of the things is to be able to lead better, because you know that when your staff go into a meeting and they're in fear, their primitive brain blocks them from hearing you. Yeah. So we need to be able to have, create that relationship a little more with more awareness, better listening skills. All of those things are going to increase your business. But where will you be in a year? And one thing I'd like to throw in there, because I do work with an amazing nutrition company. Did you know that the number one reason people don't achieve their goals, aside from the self-talk and the belief, is that they don't have enough fuel to get there? Meaning that if you don't have enough nutrition, and it's tough to get enough nutrition these days from the food that we eat, you'll procrastinate because you just won't have the energy. You won't have the mental focus, and you won't have the energy. So that's something that can make a huge difference in everyone's life. So what will your health look like? What will your relationships look like? Now imagine yourself 1 year from today, and it's been the best year of your life. Exactly what's going on in all of those categories, in your health, in your business, in your relationships. Where are you? Who are you with? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? And we're going to talk about that neuro-linguistic programming anchor. So if you change nothing, we're going to be in a year. What will your health look like? What will your relationships look like? What will your business look like? Now imagine yourself 1 year from today. It's been the best year of your life. What is happening? You've got to break it down to figures. I'm a businesswoman. What gets measured gets done. What is happening in your business? What is happening in your life? And if you want to have better health a year from now than you do right now, then you're going to have to make some changes, right? If I want my biceps to get bigger, I've got to do some work. Okay. Now, after you have identified the best year and what your business is like, what your health is like, what your relationship is like, imagine that you're there and write down, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? What do you smell? That's a way of triggering the brain through neuro-linguistic programming. And now that you see where the ideal situation is a year from now you write goals that are incremental, that can get you there. If you need to double your business, you break it down, eat that elephant one bite at a time. What do I need to do to double my business? Do I need to hire? Do I need to increase my retail? What do I need to do to double my business? Create goals in increments so that you can see them. And yes, make your storyboard, put sticky notes. This one says perfect example. I want to be a good example of fitness and wellness. This one not sticky. Make sticky notes. Remind yourself. Space, sustained repetition is so important. Now here's the toughest question. You're going to have to be really honest with yourself. What capabilities do you need in order to reach those goals? You're going to have to learn something and do something. Learn something and do something. And it's going to be different than what you did last year. Does that make sense?
The step just before that, all that whole exercise, again, seems to be listening to what you want, right? There's, I know I've mentioned this on the show before, but there's a quote from Naval Ravikant that is something like, inspiration is fleeting, seize it immediately. Similarly, life trajectory, goal selection, picturing your future, the success that it may be as you dream it up to be, is or has got to be equally fleeting. Like, I'm thinking back to the dream that you were describing with the moats and the story you mentioned earlier. Had you not captured that, which I'm assuming you did, the moment you arose, it would have dissipated, and then that could have been the death of the materialization of, in this case, it's a little bit different than a dream, but I'm sure you've had situations that are similar to that. Maybe you wake up and, oh my God, there's the idea for the next campaign that we run for the business. So is there something to be said as well about, in even being able to answer those questions authentically, that the prereq to that, the ticket into that venue, is listening to your own yearnings, desires, things that you don't think are believable or attainable, but capturing that and putting that in a bag for future consumption, say. Is that how you think about that?
Absolutely. In the first collaborative book that I was in, there was a woman who was raised to believe that she was supposed to be a doctor, and that was all that mattered, and no summers off. That was always summer school, and she decided, she got the guts to decide that she wanted a different kind of career. And that was a huge challenge for her. So you need to ask yourself the questions, where will I thrive the best? And families are the best at telling you that you're wrong. And, they can be wonderful at telling you that you're great, but they're also really good at telling you that you're wrong. So be careful about that if that's happening. But, what do you want to do? What gifts do you have? What would you do all day long for free? Because if the time flies, those are that's, you're right. That's all about listening to yourself, being honest with yourself, and recognizing what lights you up.
Yeah. Gosh. So it would seem that the next step after answering these really easy questions to answer, said no one, the hardest question set ever to answer. What do we do with it then? We have our answers. We've thought it through. We struggled through the wall of unimaginative, predictable responses that are influenced and largely dictated by our, again, I'm going to borrow a concept from this book here, psychocybernetics. These answers to these questions are but they're largely influenced by the self-image we have of ourself. Mm-hmm. When I started this podcast, how am I going to do a podcast? I don't know anything about this industry, but I was, at that point, I've been in the space for 3 years or whatever it was. Still a complete greenhorn relative to some of the true experts I've had on the show today. But we answer the questions, we shape them up, maybe in a document or something of the sort, which I think is probably the right play, right? Is to write it out instead of relying on.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. So we do that with extreme clarity, and we have all the emotive elements. I am seeing this. I am feeling this. I am tasting the champagne because I hit the 7-figure mark or whatever the goal is that I was in pursuit of. And I'm with all my friends. We're at Dead Rabbit in New York City or some exciting club. And it's the time of our life. Answers written out. Now, what do we do with that? The answers to the clarity tool question set. Now what?
Now you need to break it down into bite-sized pieces. You have to decide where you want to be. You've decided where you want to be in a year. And now where do you want to be in 9 months and 6 months and 3 months and 1 month? What tasks do you need to perform in a day in order to make that happen, and break that down into A, B, and C tasks? And don't touch a B task until the A's are done. And don't tell me that that's happening every day.
Nope.
Because we all, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to get up and do something menial than it is to make that phone call. And it feels so good though to get those big tasks done. But you need to find someone to hold you accountable to what it is you need to do, especially in the beginning, until you burn a new neural pathway, until it becomes a habit. And it will, there's a book called Habit Power by Charles Duhigg. And it's amazing how we can create a new habit. I'll tell you one of the examples he gives about working out. He says, if you want to start running and you've been putting it off, put your shoes right by your bed, your running shoes, so that you see them the second you sit up. Force yourself to run for the first 2 weeks. And when you come back, eat a piece of chocolate. Now, what's happening is that your body is producing endorphins because you worked out. You're getting some oxytocin because you're proud of yourself. And you're getting a little more endorphins because you ate a piece of chocolate. He said in 2 weeks, when you see those shoes, your brain will start to secrete those hormones without touching the run or the chocolate. And now it's going to be more natural to get up and run than it is not. It is so powerful, so powerful. We can create a new habit, but we either need to be in a course with a coach or have somebody that is going to hold us accountable. Most people will fall back if they're on their own, and it doesn't need to be a professional, and it needs to be tracked. It needs to be tracked on a daily basis. There are so many tools. And I want to give you a chance to speak. I know I'm kind of, I call.
No, please do. Don't stop.
I'm getting excited, but it is it's just so powerful that we can create these tools, and that they will start to take over, and they will become the new us, and our adult is driving the bus, right? So it's so great. It feels really, really, really good because we can be response able. If somebody says, oh, you want to be more responsible? You'd go, no, thank you. But when you're able to be response able for your future, you're in control. You're in the driver's seat, and it's so much fun. So much fun.
We talked about NLP and some anchors, and it sounds like that last approach is one of the tools that we can, or I guess it'd be a habit that we can utilize to hack our, I don't know if it'd be a dopamine circuit or something in our neurochemistry. Are there other NLP or anchor type tools we have in our kits that we can use?
Absolutely. And there are, before I tell you about the anchor, let me just think if I can remember his name. His name will come to me. It's crazy that it's not coming up. But I had a face-to-face conversation with a very famous coach. And he told me that we create our goals in our conscious mind, but until the goal is brought from your conscious mind into your unconscious mind and then into your I am, it will not naturally happen. So rather than just saying, I really, really, really want to earn $200,000 next year, I am earning. I am happy and grateful that I am earning. Bob Proctor. This is who this comes from. Face to face.
Okay.
I am earning $200,000 a year. I am healthy and fit. I am 120 pounds of lean muscle. I'm not. I am close.
You fooled me.
Close. So he actually says to ask source. Those are his words. To ask source to bring that goal from your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, into your I am, and become it. And whenever you make an affirmation of any type, which you just referred to, it's not about gimme, gimme, gimme. Oh, please, can I make more money? Oh, I please, I need to be more. No, don't. That's a negative way of even praying or setting affirmations. It is, I am happy and grateful that I am. You see the difference?
Yeah.
And it feels good too.
Yeah. Does it ever? Yeah. Yeah. Because the alternative approach, like you mentioned, is it implies that you're in lack of it, which just reinforces this negative perception of yourself, leads to this tarnishment of your self-image, your self-esteem. And this is actually where I was hoping you would go, is exploring ways that we can, well, assuming Dr. Maltz is correct in this book. I keep coming back to this damn book, but of all the books I've ever read on self-development, this is the book from my perspective. But he talks about your self-image and the fact that your self-image, the boundaries of it, are what constrain your capacity to create. And that could be your business, your spa growth, your this, that, or the other. And it seems like this approach with affirmations and the Bob Proctor idea you just shared is one of the ways in which we can expand our self-image to widen the surface area of that which is possible with the development of our spas, our own being, our team that we oversee and lead. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how, coming full circle back to the curing the same. Now you have me self-conscious about using the term virus as well from your bio on your website. But what are some of the ways that we can, in some sense, we've already discussed this with self-talk and that kind of thing. But if we're after honestly answering the questions that the clarity tool gives us, it would seem that the starting point really would be, well, how can I widen, again, my self-image such that I'm capable of dreaming bigger or thinking bigger? Are there any cognitive approaches or NLP tools or otherwise that we can use to almost ready and prime our subconscious mind such that we're able to actually answer, you know what, for the clarity tool question, I'm going to build the biggest wellness franchise in America. And that's what I'm doing. And nothing's going to stop me from doing that. Is there some sort of other preliminary work that we can do or tools that we can use to help in the expansion of our, to use his term, self-image?
I think identifying what our real self-image is important, because a lot of times we skate through life and we don't really have that conversation with ourselves. And then, as you were saying, writing things down, capturing, try to go 24 hours, try to go 6 hours without saying something negative about yourself. And if you and write it down that from this hour to this, from this time to this time, you're going to catch yourself. And there are so many exercises that check in with a friend that by this day I'm going to have achieved this little bit of my step towards making this difference, and check and may I call you and tell you when I've done it. And they're not going to say no. They're not going to say no. What gets measured gets done. And there are so many exercises in the course that you're taking, in the course that I teach. There are so many exercises that just help you to identify and repeat in different ways. And keep in mind, it takes space, sustained repetition. So a lot of times we're kind of doing the same thing, whether we're putting pictures up of what it is that we that we want, or we're writing it down, or we're sharing with friends, or we're in the theta state right before you go to sleep, repeating to yourself that scene of where it is that you want to be. I am. Right before you go to sleep in the theta state. Your brain is very, very malleable. That's a perfect time to also to repeat things and get them downloaded.
So if we were to, let's say, bundle all this up into I guess two different, a DIY kit. Hey, just go do this, which is, let's say, option 1 of 2 for those that are serious about this and they're in a position where maybe they, like me at the start of this year, were feeling like I am not doing enough to meet the potential, reaching the ceiling of the totality of my being or something like that. And they're sold. They're like, yes, DeeAnn, I'm in. I want to do this. And maybe they want to baby step into it. Maybe the option A is DIY. Option B, or the easy button, is just go call DeeAnn, excuse me. But if they want to do a DIY sort of home kit, I'm sold. I believe in what you're saying, that these, lack of a better term, the self-image I have of myself is not congruent with what I want to be and become, etc. Help, what do I do? So how can we distill this down into a set of actionables that we can leave the listener with to improve their mind management, let's say? And then we'll wrap up the show with the way for them to connect with you if they want to work with you, which I'd be surprised if people did not, because I frankly want to at this point.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I would love to share how people can just get started. I think that's really, really powerful.
Let's do that.
But the other thing is, I would love to share an anchor too, because they're in neurolinguistic programming, when you identify where it is that you want to be ultimately, and you identify what you see, hear, smell, taste when you're there, and then you create an anchor, it will drive it into your subconscious mind. So that's another tool. And I'll share one of mine, and I'll try not to cry because it's very emotional for me, but it's a personal one. Now notice that I'm using all of my senses, because that is going to drive it into my brain.
Okay.
I can hear the heels of my shoes walking across the hardwood floor. I enter the kitchen, and my 2 daughters and my daughter-in-law are pretending to make a salad, but they're really just laughing and having a sip of wine. I open the sliding glass doors, and my son-in-law, Dan, is barbecuing, and my husband's in the pool with some of the grandkids. And just beyond that is my son playing basketball with 2 of his little boys. And I can smell lilacs, and I can smell barbecue, and I can hear the laughter. See, look, and I sit down and I have a sip of wine. And then you go like this and you go, double it. And then go through the whole scene again and say, double it, double it. And then throughout the day, You don't have to repeat it all day long. Just say, double it. When you're driving along, double it. No, don't go like that because you might get in trouble. Double it. And your subconscious mind will start to unconsciously feel and smell all of those senses, and it becomes real to you. So it is just so, it's so powerful. Identify where you are now. Is that going to work for you? Where are you going to be in 1 year, 2 year, 5 year? Where are you going to be in your health in 10 years? When you're my age at 67, where are you going to be with your health if you do change nothing? How about your relationships? What do you need to change? I mean, I know several people who just have never had a relationship, and the only thing is that they don't believe that they can have a relationship, and they sabotage it. And they would never, if you told them that, they'd slap you because they don't know that they're doing that. But where do you want to be? If you change nothing, where will you be? And why is it important? Why get your feelings involved? Why is it important to make those changes? And what do you need to learn in order to get there? And then you're going to have to create some kind of spaced, sustained repetition, and it will happen. I think I have it right here. I have I moved it. I had a little storyboard that fit into my day timer, and it's about 25 years old. And I found it, and every single one of those pictures is my life. And I wrote a chapter with my son in this book behind me, Family Tree. And he said the same thing. He said, my mom taught me to write goals, and my mom taught me to make storyboards. And I have every goal that I've ever when I used her tools, I achieved every goal. So the children are listening. They may not do what you do, but they do what they see you do. So how would you like to close?
I guess to put a button on the what would the term be? Avocation for, effectively visualization, the practice of that, which is what you just walked us through, where you're feeling and seeing and smelling and tasting, and all the emotions are woven into that visual. Why that is so powerful, if the audience is unaware.
The brain establishes it as true, and we know that we get what we believe. The brain will believe that it's true and will set out to make it happen. If you believe yourself to be worthy, you'll make it happen. If you believe yourself to be unfit and useless, you'll make it happen. And it's just the way it is. And I'll tell you about more about our beliefs. My mother very, very affectionately called me Skinny Winnie my whole life. She thought I was too thin when I was really little, and she took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, oh, she's fine, she's just small. And she called me Skinny Winnie all my life. And I was having lunch with a woman who was a big vitamin producer. She created vitamins for a major company, and she commented on my weight, and I told her that that's my comfort zone, because my mom always told me I was Skinny Winnie. And so she went beet red, and she said, and she was quite overweight, and she went beet red, and she said, all my life my brothers called me lumpy. And we did some coaching around that, and the next time I saw her 6 months later, she was fit and fabulous. See, we just decide, we change who we believe ourselves to be.
We don't get what we think about or want. We get what we believe. And the fact, to your point, that the brain does not differentiate or distinguish between actual real life experienced events and synthetic events that happen in our mind through visualization is the best news we could possibly have. We get to re-architect who we are, what we're going to accomplish, and who we want to be. In our spas, our massage therapy clinics, doesn't matter. In our self. And it all starts with this. Wow. Is there anything we missed that we should discuss?
Well, I love to close with the poem that's in Think and Grow Rich.
I would love for you to do that.
Okay. And I've added this part. I want you to look at your hand and pretend that there's a penny in your hand. And that penny represents anything you want more of in your life: relationship, health, business, wealth, whatever it is you want more of with your life in your life. And it goes like this: I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at eve as I counted my scanty store. For life is a just employer, why he'll give you what you ask. But once you set the wages, why you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire only to learn dismayed that whatever I had asked of life, life would willingly have paid. Namaste.
Wow. DeeAnn, you are doing incredible work, necessary work. The world needs more of you. Now, we can't clone you, which is a tragedy, but thankfully through the internet, there are ways to clone your brain through these courses you have, the books you have, etc. So I want to make sure we don't leave the audience on a cliffhanger, meaning no way to connect with you. So what is the best way for the audience to get in touch if they choose to?
Probably my email. I mean, empoweredinsideout.com is an easy way to remember, empoweredinsideout.com. My email is D and my last name at Lensen, Lensen, Inc., I-N-C, D@lenseninc.com. That's the easiest one.
Okay. Is that spelled out or is that D-E-E?
It's just letter D.
Okay. Now I'm going to plug her other site too, because I think this is a must to see her work, which I think is fantastic. Is DeeAnnLensen.com, DeeAnnLensen.com, which is, I'll say it in the phonetic, harkening back to my old Air Force days. So Delta, Echo, Alpha, November, Lima, Echo, November, September, Echo, November.com. So DeeAnnLensen.com. The moment I realized I had to have her on the show was actually the promotional video she has for one of her courses. And you'll quickly realize why, well, if you haven't already, which it should be glaringly obvious, why DeeAnn is such a superstar. And on that note, I am so glad we can make this happen.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on.
My pleasure. I'm so blessed to know you. Thank you.
You're amazing. Well, I'm sure we will be in touch soon.